technical difficulties. And boy, this looks like I'm in the Arctic. It is blindingly white behind me.
You turned to the maps the other times.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, maybe did I do it in front of the maps last time?
You turned the camera.
Oh, it'll be fine. So it looks like I'm on an infinite white screen right now. So hello everyone, welcome. Sorry, I'm 3 minutes late. We had a little technical difficulty trying to get Twitch up and running, and so I will start this conversation as I often do by asking you all, hey. Can anybody out there see me and hear me? Is this actually working right now? Boy, actually, that light is super bright. Let me just turn that a little bit this way. Maybe that'll help tone things down with my infinite light. It's a little bit better. Okay. So, can everyone see me and hear me? Is this stream working here on the Plaid Avenger Twitch channel? And let me see who's already jumped into the fun with me. JC_VT says, fun. Aiden P 2023 says, yo, R cover C has got the Velociraptor face. Hannah Huff is in the house with a big yes. First time chatter from Krukobo 121. I like that. Krukobo saying hello. Hello to you, Krukobo. Cat 101684 can hear and see me, and JC_VT has got a capital Y, which stands for yo. So that means I can officially launch our February 5th online live office hours for World Regional Geography, aka World Regions. Welcome, my friends, to the first podcast of February 2024. Coming to you live, of course, from an undisclosed secret underground location somewhere near Virginia Tech, home of the Fighting Hokies, here in Blacksburg, Virginia. The greatest institution of higher learning east of the Mississippi, if not the world. And we have some other chatters from Holden watching Twitch saying, sorry, I'm a bit late, just finished the movie. That's okay, Holden watching Twitch. I was late too, we just started up. Kat says, the movie is great. This week's movie is, refresh me. What is the movie? JCVT says, the same, LOL, for the movie is great. Kat says, this is the fourth time I've watched it. Motorcycle Diaries. Yes, I do love Motorcycle Diaries. One of the best travel adventure buddy movies that really displays such a great cross section of geography of South America. From, let's see, Buenos Aires, Argentina, over to Chile, up to Peru and Ecuador, and I think they end up in Venezuela. Don't they fly out of Caracas, I believe. Love that movie, based on historical, true life historical events of one Che Guevara as a young man traveling across a great continent. I actually would really love on my to-do list, I don't like saying bucket list because I've never understood the term bucket list. What does that mean, actually? Bucket list. Here are things I want to do and I'm putting them in a bucket? I never quite got it. So I say on my to-do list is actually to retrace the events of that film and to travel across all of South America in similar fashion. Probably not on a motorcycle. I'm a bit too old and tired for that. But do it in style, but to go to every country in South America, I think would be a fantastic thing for me to do. And I think it would be a fantastic thing for you all to do. We often go to Europe and travel around and have a great time because Europe is a fantastic place and it's easy to travel in Europe. Traveling across Latin America or South America specifically would probably be much more of an adventure, much more challenging, and therefore much more fun and memorable in the story that is your life. Now, didn't mean to get all waxing poetic there about South America or Motorcycle Diaries, but it is a good one, and it is based on true events on the diaries of a guy that came to be known as Che Guevara. Let's see, a first-time chatter from Rakenwad saying hello. Hello, Rakenwad. Welcome to the online office hours, and thanks for your first chat. Kat says it comes from the phrase to kick the bucket when you pass. So yeah, you want to have your bucket list of things you do before you kick the bucket, I still think it's misnamed. So if you have these things in your bucket and it's named for when you die, when you kick the bucket, it should be called the pre-bucket list. Or not yet hit the bucket list. But I now understand it. Thank you for clarifying that for me, Kat. I had not considered it until just this moment. So what I was going to do tonight, as always, is first off, welcome you all back to the online office hour, and for those first timers and or people who are just floating around on Twitch and have somehow stumbled across the Plaid Avengers Twitch channel, I am John Boyer, a professor of geography here at Virginia Tech, and this is our World Regions Forum to talk about all things that are happening in the world and or anything happening in class. Is everybody having a good time in class so far? Have you learned anything in the World Regions class so far? Do you have any problems with things in the World Regions class so far? Are there any questions I can answer about technicalities or assignments or things that are happening in World Regions? And then the follow-up to that is, and does anybody have any current events they'd like to talk about? Anything happening in the world that they don't quite understand what's going on and want to learn more about? Does anyone have any of those questions before we go any further? And I just realized my wine might be matching my shirt. Oh, it is. Well played. Let me do this off camera. I think it's illegal for me to do it on camera. And I'm joking, of course. It probably is illegal, but I don't care. Okay, Aiden. Welcome back, Aiden P 2023, who says, I really liked last week's lesson. Could this class please form its own nation? And the follow-up is, sorry, form its own state. That is a great idea, Aiden. I think maybe I've even suggested that as extra credit in the past when I used to teach this class live. Not only did we have the World Leader Death Watch that everybody could earn extra credit from, but I think I offered extra credit for any group of students that went out and formed their own country / formed their own state. So that's on the table. Anybody that wants to try to form up a sovereign, if this class gets together and forms a sovereign state, everybody gets an A. I don't know if it can be pulled off in 3.5 months, but you know, it's a good assignment. See what you can do. Quick question to the people watching: is the volume lowers in my laptop, Katie? My computer mic says that it's set pretty high, but I can. Katie, can you come look at this and make sure I'm doing it right? Does that look like computer mic? It looks like it's reading fine.
Yeah, you can bump it up.
Up here?
Yeah, that's good.
How about this? Is this any better for anybody?
Of course, people had earphones in. Probably.
I know. Hopefully, if you have any earphones in, I won't yell too loud. But whoever just asked that question, I'm sorry. It was Rackenwad and Aiden. Is it any better now? Can you hear me more clearly? Oh, wait a minute. Duh. It's because the microphone is down low. I'm so sorry.
That's why, yeah.
God, thanks for nothing, Katie. Jeez.
I didn't realize you didn't pull it up.
I forgot I moved the setup. Now it's gonna be really loud. Hold on, let me turn it back down. Let me turn it back down. Okay, how about now? Can everybody hear me now? Good. Sorry, my old school microphone from the radio days. Hello, everyone. Welcome. The Hindenburg is going down. Well, I forgot I had that on a lower shelf, so hopefully it sounds better now. Okay. Crookabo says, what do you think about making a movie assignment on Hotel Rwanda for some extra credit since we learned about the Sovereignty Stopper genocide last week? Oh, that's a good idea, Crookabo. I have used that movie in times past. But I've been doing this so long, everybody's completely and utterly forgotten about the Rwandan genocide. And so, honestly, your generation, I'm surprised you even know the reference at all, because with humans, our species at this point in our planetary history, our species-wide memory is about 10 years. Anything that happened more than 10 years ago, nobody remembers. So to answer your question, Katie, it was called sometime in April. Yeah, it was. That was a really good one too. Also about the Rwandan genocide. Yeah, I could do a back-to-back. I haven't done a lecture about Sub-Saharan Africa in this course for years and years and years. And what I have done in semesters past, and I can do this right now today if you want, is I've allowed the class to pick what regions they want me to lecture about. Katie, we have not done that this semester, right? Okay, so I can set up a survey for you all, and the whole class can vote on what regions would you like me to lecture about before the end of the semester, and I'll go through all the regions of the entire textbook. I'll just list them all, and whatever one gets the most votes, that's the one that we'll do lecture. I will do a lecture on, and I haven't done a lecture on Sub-Saharan Africa for probably a decade. So if you all want to vote for Sub-Saharan Africa, then I can do a lecture, and maybe during that week I could work back in those films of Hotel Rwanda and sometimes in April, which are both great films about the Rwandan genocide. So you guys chat me up here in the chat room. Would you like to have that survey? Would you like to be able to pick what regions that you want me to lecture about? Because I'm feeling a little uppity this semester. I'm feeling a little juiced. And I kind of want to do something new and or something I've not done for a while. So how many of you would like to be able to pick what regions that I lecture about this semester? And while we're talking about it, we'll just go ahead in the chat room and tell me which regions you like. I can activate that survey so the whole class can vote, but I'm interested in the students that are here in the chat room because you all are the best students. I'm not saying that to pander to you, quite frankly, but the folks like you all that are already so engaged in the course this early in the semester and you're coming into an online office hour that is not required, you all are the best students in the course. And you all are taking your education seriously, and you all are going to get the most out of your college degree because you're actually interested in what's going on and you're trying to learn and grow and be a better human. And that's why I love you folks that are here in the chat room right now. Folks that come to the university thinking, I'm going to take a bunch of classes and go get a great job making $1 million a year are going to ultimately not do well in life, and their college years are going to be lost to them. They're just trying to get to some imaginary goal that's going to make them money, instead of understanding that the reason you come to college is to do what you all are doing right now, which is to be engaged and try to better yourselves and learn more and get curious and find out about things that you never heard about. That's why we go to college. You don't go to college simply to get a better job. By the way, if you come to college with the right attitude, which all of you in this chat room have the right attitude, you will get a better job. But if you come to college thinking, I'm going to do the absolute minimum and do as little as possible because all I have to do is get this degree to get a $1 billion job, you're going to be so unhappy in life. But that doesn't apply to you all. So I would like you all to tell me what you're interested in, and I will weigh your opinions higher than even the class survey. So what all would you all like me to talk about this semester in terms of regions themselves? Okay. Only here for the Plaidcast. Welcome back, Only here. By the way, for you first-timers here, Only here for the Plaidcast isn't even a current student. It's a former student who still tunes into these things. Only here for the Plaidcast says, did you see the news of Northern Ireland's top political office being held for the first time by a member of the historically IRA-affiliated party? Of course I did, Only here for the Plaidcast. It does appear that, and most of you folks who are in world regions right now probably are not well-versed in some historical things that happened 20 and 30 years ago. But Northern Ireland is not part of, sovereignty-wise, is not part of Ireland. Northern Ireland is technically, in sovereignty, part of the United Kingdom. And there's a whole bad history of how that came to be, including the bad times in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s where there was true full-on terrorist attacks on British officials from this group called the IRA. What does IRA stand for? Irish Republican Army. And a whole peace treaty had to be designed and it was worked on for decades. Anyway, long story short, it was a done deal. There was peace in Northern Ireland for 20 years, maybe longer. And everybody thought, well, that's a historical relic. It's gone. There's never going to be any problems in Northern Ireland again. And apparently that is not the case. There are, the IRA is becoming, it became a political party, but it might start becoming a terrorist group again. And I'm going out on a limb here. I'm not saying they are. But there is renewed angst within the IRA ranks about the status of Northern Ireland. Again, an issue everybody thought was done, dead and buried. And so, given that the United Kingdom is having problems with Scotland, who might want to become an independent state soon, it seems to me that the Northern Ireland issue might be back on the table for possibly pulling away from the United Kingdom and perhaps rejoining Ireland, the island. Ireland is an island, but it's also Ireland, the sovereign state. And Northern Ireland, the northern tip, might start another independence movement that wants to pull away from the UK and rejoin Ireland. I never thought I would say that. I would have said this 5 years ago. I'm not even sure I would have said it 2 years ago. But there is angst that is boiling back up within the society. And as Only Here for the Podcast points out, the reason why this has made the headlines is because the main head honcho now in Northern Ireland, who just got voted in, was a member of this historically IRA party, which was anti-British and pro-independence. So things might be happening there. And what I was going to talk about tonight, actually, to make it into a possible flash quiz, is a 2024 Sovereign States update. And for those of you that are actually taking this class and watching the material and reading the material, you know that last week you watched a 2016 sovereignty update. And several of you awesome students pointed out, Boyer, dude, how do you have an update that's 8 years old? That's not an update anymore. And I'm like, Jesus, thank you for pointing out my inadequacies. You are correct. It can't be called an update anymore because it's 8 years old. So maybe I was going to spend tonight talking about, okay, let's talk about 2024 sovereignty issues update. And then I'll re-record that video and make it into a flash quiz for you good people. Of course, you're going to score 100 on it because you're going to help me flush out the script for that 2024 update, and you're doing it already. So Northern Ireland, talking about sovereignty issues. Northern Ireland, which seemed to be doing fine for 20 years, may be now starting to dust off its sovereignty ideals and may be wanting to pull away from the United Kingdom to rejoin Ireland proper. The United Kingdom is a sovereign state. Ireland is a sovereign state. Northern Ireland may be jumping from one team to another, and things could heat up quickly now that someone who's the head of Northern Ireland is an IRA supporter and member. And that brings me to another thing I mentioned in the 2016 update, which was possible Scottish independence. Scotland, another sub-state of the United Kingdom, has on again, off again, had referendums to separate and become their own sovereign state. If Northern Ireland starts a pro-independence movement, watch out. It's going to inflame and ignite the pro-Scottish independence movement, which again has been gaining in strength ever since the United Kingdom pulled out of the European Union in that whole debacle that we now reference as Brexit. So we're really looking at the end of empire. The last vestiges of the British Empire is their actual sovereign state. So the British, at the height of their empire, had territories all over the world. They owned America at the time. Remember, the 13 original colonies were a British colony. Canada, British colony. Australia, British colony. New Zealand, British colony. Singapore, India, what's now Pakistan, Bangladesh. All these were British colonies at one point. Over the course of the last 100 years, the Brits have lost all those foreign territories, but they still have the core, which is the United Kingdom itself. And the United Kingdom is England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Am I forgetting anything? England? Yeah, that's it. So it was 4 named territories that we recognized together, united into one United Kingdom. And now that looks subject to debate. So as this is, again, the last gasp of the British Empire, that they've lost all their overseas territories over the last century, and now it looks like it might be the end game for this entity called the United Kingdom itself. It could really kind of revert back to just England and Wales, although I'm sure there's probably a Welsh independence movement that I don't know anything about. But Scotland and Northern Ireland are certainly back in play. Thanks for pulling that up, only here for the podcast, because that gets into what I was going to talk about tonight of what are the 2024 sovereignty issues. But let me catch up with the comments, and then I will get back to ranting about something different. So Merlin the Magician says, yep. Our cover C says, don't turn it down. Oh, we're talking about the volume. Sure, I'll turn it back up. Everybody who's wearing headphones, just readjust. It just got a little louder. I will try to not yell until you readjust your own headphones. Plaid Katie chimes in with check out Sometimes in April, which is even better than Hotel Rwanda. Yeah, it's cuts to the bone. It's deep. Cat 101 says, can we put King Charles from England on the World Leader Death Watch? Ooh, we're right back to the United Kingdom. Well played, Cat. That was in the news today. 6 hours ago. It has been released that King Charles, the head of this sovereign state of the United Kingdom, has cancer, and I think it was prostate cancer. Now,
They haven't said yet.
actually, I read it.
Waiting for prostate exam because largely they said the cancer is something different.
Okay, Katie's saying he went to a prostate exam, but then they said something about cancer. It sounds like prostate cancer to me. In either case, he has the best medical professionals and best medical insurance literally on planet Earth. So unless he has some sort of bizarre, uncurable, untouchable cancer, which is unlikely, he ain't dying anytime soon. But you're right, Kat. That is an interesting turn of events. He just became king in the last couple years. After his mother died after being queen for a century? I don't even remember. She was queen my whole life. So he just got the top slot, and now here he has cancer. And I mean, I feel bad. All of us feel bad. We don't want anybody to have cancer. We don't want anybody to die. But that is a revelation. And Kat, you're right. He should be on World Leader Death Watch. No disrespect to the king or his family, but that is the game, and we watch these things. And I will now tie it back to current events. This is actually a really big deal because the monarchy, the royals, have been losing popularity for quite some time. Let's call it my lifetime. And so the fact that they're going to have another rapid succession if King Charles either dies or steps down due to health problems and King William takes over, they'll have the pomp and circumstance, and a bunch of people who like daytime soap operas will watch it and think it's hilarious. But from a geopolitical standpoint, it is quite important because both Scotland and Northern Ireland, which I have now mentioned in the last 15 minutes, are increasingly unhappy being part of this empire. And they will see this. Agitators for independence in Northern Ireland and Scotland will see the turbulence of another transition as an opportune time to reinvigorate their movements and just vote to get the hell out of the United Kingdom. So even though it's a seemingly unrelated event, a old dude, maybe with prostate cancer, that can't affect world events, except that it does because he's the king in a very trying time for the remnants of the United Kingdom, the remnants of the British Empire, and a fractured and possibly dividing United Kingdom. So any little, again, it seems like perhaps a trivial event from a geopolitical situation, a guy might have cancer, but it really will affect the movements of independence movements in both of those areas and other places, by the way. A lot of Caribbean islands have divested themselves from the Commonwealth Club, and this isn't exactly a sovereignty thing, but while I'm talking about this, I will tell you right now, and you can tell me if you like this enough to make it into a 2024 sovereignty update. Most of the Caribbean islands that were British possessions at one point, and places like Canada and places like Australia, while they are sovereign states, they still have a somewhat slight allegiance to the United Kingdom because they still recognize the Queen, or now the King, as kind of a figurehead for their countries. Even though Canada's completely a sovereign state and they're independent, so is Australia, but they still have allegiance to the old British Empire past. And lots of people within those countries have said, why are we doing this? This is stupid. It's the 21st century. Who the hell cares about the Queen? Or who the hell cares about the King? What the hell's this guy got to do with anything happening in New Zealand? So there have been movements in the past and currently. They're like, can we just cut ourselves loose of this whole Commonwealth of Independent States? That's what I was going to say. This would be a good test question. The CSI. Commonwealth of Independent States, that's Russia. I'm sorry. It's the Commonwealth Club. The Commonwealth Club is a group of states that used to be part of the British Empire proper, and still, even though they're sovereign states now, they have this allegiance to the Queen / the King, and so as a figurehead. So they actually have a Commonwealth Club. They still had kind of tight economic relationships with the United Kingdom, and they even have the Commonwealth Games. You can go look it up. Just the former territories / countries of the British Empire still have this kind of cultural tie where they play sports and do different things. But a lot of folks here in the last 10 years have even gotten tired of that. And in the Caribbean, several Caribbean states, I believe Jamaica being the most recent one, have said, we don't even give a shit about that anymore. We are done. In fact, I don't know if it's Jamaica, but Barbados. I know for certain Barbados divested themselves of the Commonwealth Club. They're like, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to receive the King and Queen and pretend like they're in charge of us. We are done. We're a sovereign state. Goodbye. So Barbados, I believe, has been, and someone could go Google this and check my facts for me, but I know Barbados officially divested from the Commonwealth last year or the year before, and I believe Jamaica is debating about it if they've not done it already as well, where they're saying Jamaica, former British colony, that still says, yes, we love to have the royals come and visit. And I think they're on the cusp of saying, the hell with this. We don't care about the royals anymore. It has nothing to do with our lives. So even that loose allegiance, this loose cultural allegiance that was the remnants of the British Empire, even that is going away in the modern era. It is kind of the end days for the UK, and possibly the end days of the UK as we currently know it, if Scotland and Ireland, Northern Ireland, are to pull away, in addition to all the Commonwealth states, which are like, we're done, we don't care. Whoa! That was just all off the top of my head, but that is part of the 2024 Sovereignty Update. Let's get to the chats and see what else is on before I go to the next thing. So good job, Kat, about putting King Charles on the Death Watch. In fact, not one of you actually even emailed me about any recommendations for the Death Watch. This is why I've not filled out a scorecard for you yet. So I need those recommendations because you're the ones that generate those recommendations. Back to Rockin' Wad, who says, so I watched the news last week and I saw the U.S. attack Syria and Iraq. Do you know why or the reason behind this action? And Hannah Huff says, Tigray. Tigray is a part of Ethiopia. I'm not sure what your reference right there is, Hannah Huff, but perhaps you can tell me more. And I'm Spicy Boy, good screen name, says, I'm going to be that annoying kid and say Canada was British and French colony. Yeah, thank you, Spicy Boy. You are correct. And you're spicy. Spicy Boy very correctly points out that there is the Quebecois, the French controlled what is now Quebec. And so it's an old French colony that has on again, off again. By the way, if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, Quebec is a state of Canada. Look it up on a map. And the Quebecois have on again, off again, also had thoughts of independence / full sovereignty status that they have voted on. I haven't heard anybody bring that up recently, so I don't know that I would include that in the 2024 sovereignty status update. But in times past, there has been independence movements within French Quebecois, but been quiet recently. Canada's got a whole host of political issues nationally, but that's not one of them that I've heard of recently. But thank you, Spicy Boy, for pointing that out. I'm going to get back to the sovereign state 2024 update issues, but let me address Rackenwad's comments about, watched the news last week, saw the U.S. attack Syria and Iraq. Do you know what's up with that or the reason behind this action? Well, of course I do, Rack and Wad. Of course I do. That's my job. To correct you only slightly is the U.S. didn't attack Iraq or Syria proper. So when you phrase it that way, you're suggesting it's a state-to-state conflict, that the U.S. attacked the Syrian government, or the U.S. attacked the Iraqi government, or the state of Iraq. That's not what happened. The U.S. attacked independent rebel/terrorist groups that are on Syrian and Iraqi soil. And you could say, well, that's a technicality, but no, it's not. It's actually a quite important technicality, because if the U.S. bombed the Iraqi, federal buildings, that would be a war. That would be the state versus state war. The U.S. attacking terrorist groups, just because they're in Iraq, does not make it a war on Iraq. And it's not an attack against Iraq specifically. And the Iraqi government was very likely informed in advance of these attacks. So the U.S. went to Iraq, not so much Syria, because we don't have diplomatic ties with them right now. They probably went to Iraq and say, hey, so we're going to bomb certain terrorist groups on your soil. Do not misinterpret this as an act of war against the Iraqi government. So there was probably warning given in advance. So that's what happened. The U.S. attacked specific targets, known targets of rebel/terrorist activity. Terrorist activity that has been mostly aimed at U.S. troops across the greater Middle Eastern region. And that leads into the why. Why did the U.S. do that? Well, Rock and Wad, maybe you saw this news story last week that a terrorist group attacked a U.S. base in northern Jordan, a U.S. base very close to both the Syrian border and the Iraq border. So go look at a map of Jordan and you'll see kind of up near the top, there's a triangle where you're pretty close to all the other borders. And a terrorist group sent in a drone with a bomb into a U.S. military facility and killed 3 U.S. service people and wounded 40 or 50 more. This is part of a greater conflict that's brewing across all of the Middle East now, that was sparked initially by this rebel/political/terrorist group called Hamas, that's located in an area called the Gaza Strip, that 2 months ago did a huge terrorist act in southern Israel and killed like 1,000 people and took like several hundred of them hostages, which in response, Israel has now for 2 months bombed the living sweet bejesus out of the Gaza Strip, displaced 1.2 million people, had devastated destruction and destroyed everything pretty much in Gaza Strip in an effort to root out the terrorist group Hamas that did this terrorist attack. Okay? So that's what was happening there. And by the way, even though it's already 8:37, I don't know how the hell we've already been doing this for 30 minutes. I was hoping to get to a 2024 update about the two-state solution in Israel. That's something I'll have to explain in more detail, perhaps in a separate podcast. But that thing that happened, that's been happening for 2 months now, the terrorist attack, Hamas, the terrorist attack on Israel. Israel has had a 2-month bombardment, devastation response in Gaza Strip. That has now been the catalyst, the spark, if you like, that has ignited a greater conflict across the Middle East, a conflict that's been a latent, quiet conflict for decades. What am I referring to? The fact that Israel even exists bothers a lot of folks in the Middle East. Many countries in the Middle East have never formally recognized Israel's right to exist. And again, I can't go into all the details because it's a whole 2-hour lecture. But because of the current true people dying conflict between Israel and Gaza Strip, it has rejuvenated and ignited terrorist groups across the greater Middle East to fight and to do stuff and to cause trouble on behalf of the Palestinians. And by the way, Palestine is at this point technically the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, the area that I'm talking about. It's being bombarded. So terrorist groups, rebel/terrorist groups, it all depends on your point of view. If you think they're doing the right thing, they're rebel groups. If you think they're doing the wrong thing, they're terrorist groups. So rebel/terrorist groups across the Middle East have been rejuvenated to fight on behalf of the Palestinian cause, and or just to cause trouble for Israel and or the United States, which has military presence across all of the Middle East, and the U.S. is a supporter of Israel. So this one conflict currently happening between the Gaza Strip and Israel has ignited a fire across the Middle East of terrorist groups that just want to hurt Israel and or push the United States out of the Middle East. And one such group is the one that claimed responsibility for the attack on that U.S. military base in Jordan. Now, does that help you understand, Rock and Wad, in less than 5 minutes, why the U.S. spent a week thinking about what to do and has now counterattacked not any specific state, but counterattacked multiple rebel/terrorist groups that they know are responsible either for that direct attack or for other things that have been happening across the Middle East, other rebel/terrorist groups which have gotten into action in the last couple months. Ones you may have heard of also are the Houthis. The Houthis are another group down in Yemen that have been attacking ships in the Red Sea on behalf of the Palestinian cause. And the U.S. has also started to covertly bomb them, covertly or overtly, I guess. And so many things are now starting to happen. And I'll just pull in one last thread of this before I finish off Rock and Watt's question, because we're almost out of time for the office hour already. This is a great office hour. When I'm having a good time and all of a sudden 40 minutes have disappeared, that means we're having a good time, right? Hopefully you're learning something. But one last thread I'll add in here is that one of the commonalities of this conflict across the Middle East is that a sovereign state named Iran is one of the main funders and promoters of many of these rebel/terrorist groups that I'm talking about that have been called into action recently. So the rebel/terrorist group, which actually claimed credit for bombing the U.S. base, is a recipient of military guns, weapons, and funding from Iran. The Houthis down in Yemen, which are bombing ships in the Red Sea, also get military funding and support from Iran. And so what you have here is Iran, which through many tendrils, like an octopus, is supporting groups all across the Middle East to push back against Israel itself, but also to push back against the U.S. forces across the Middle East. Iran is doing this, again, through other entities. Iran's not doing it itself. Iran is not bombing Israel. Iran is not bombing U.S. military installations. Iran is facilitating other small groups to do those things. We call it a proxy war. Iran is enlisting small groups of proxies to go fight the good fight, in their eyes, against Israel and the United States. And the United States has been very hesitant to get involved in taking the bait from any of these Iranian-backed proxies, because the United States does not want this to erupt into a greater giant war. Meaning the United States knows Iran is behind these proxies that are blowing stuff up, but it doesn't want to attack Iran directly, because now you are having a state-to-state open conflict that is an actual war. See how I just did that? I brought that whole thing full circle. I said the United States is not actively engaged in a state-to-state fight, but the fear is they don't want to do that, because the fear is if they go much further, if the U.S. does much more, then they might have to attack Iran. And now you're looking at a U.S. versus Iran fight on top of the Israel versus Hamas fight and the terrorist group across the region that are fighting against everybody on the sidelines. So this could spiral into something bigger. And the U.S. is trying to kind of pull back, saying, no, we're going to go after the people that killed our U.S. service people, and we know Iran's behind it, but we're not going to attack Iran directly yet. It remains to be seen if they will. That's the fear that a lot of folks have, myself included. Okay, but we should talk more in detail about Israel and the Hamas situation, which I started to talk about last week. Maybe that could be a whole region that you would like talked about during this semester. Would you like a whole lecture just on the Middle East? That might be a long one, but I'll do my best. First time chatter. Thank you for that great question, Rock and Wad. One more shout out to Spicy Boy, who pointed out that part of Canada was a French colony, not a British one. First time chatter from OMRCZ says, "Hi, Professor. Sorry I'm late to chat about the regions of interest. I'm really interested in Eastern Europe." Wow, I haven't had a request for Eastern Europe for a long time. And or countries that were part of the USSR. Oh, you mean countries like Ukraine that used to be part of the USSR that currently Russia is trying to take back into its own sovereign territory? That's another 2024 sovereignty update that maybe we're going to have to get to in a longer podcast I'll record separately. By the way, thank God I finally remembered to do this before the end of the hour. But let's see, who just asked the good questions? Let's go back to, I'll stick with first-time chatter OMRCZ. So any of you that are currently in the chat room, if you are literally currently watching me speak right this second, what you need to do is email me, and it is 8:45. 8:45. I will give it to 8:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and all you have to do is email me the password. The password is Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe. Email me the word Eastern Europe, and you just earned 5 points for being involved in this online office hour that we eventually will make into a 2024 sovereignty update, and you'll take another flash quiz to get even more points. So Eastern Europe, in the next 2 minutes, email me. Katie will put my email here into the chat room. Okay. So thanks for that request, OM. I have not had an Eastern European request for quite some time. Kat, I know I'm way behind, but Kat says the news reported that Prince William will step in for King Charles for the time being. And for the time being, it might be like for the rest of King William's life. Because King William, the next king, King William, Prince William for now, is actually more popular than King Charles. So they might just make the command decision to let him take over right this second to try to salvage the reputation and the desirability of keeping the royals in charge at all. Because even within the United Kingdom, even within England proper, which is the core of the United Kingdom, there are many people that for decades have said, get rid of the monarchy, it's a joke. So they go on again, off again. A lot of people love the royals, but an equal number of people don't particularly care and think it's a big waste of money. So the royal family itself is going to be very stressed out because every transition is an opportunity for them to be ejected out of society altogether. And they're going to be under such threat. But Prince William is beloved. So they might put him up there right now because people really like him more than they like the current king. First time chatter from Jay Seamster, who says, I like the Eastern Europe former USSR idea as well. Dang, 2 votes for Eastern Europe. OMC says, I'm glad I'm not the only one actually super interested in Hungary, but the old Soviet bloc states are all interesting. They are. I love it. And it's all very current events, and it has a lot to do with the 2024 sovereignty status update that I keep trying to get back to, because Russia's reinvigoration of taking over its old USSR territories is one of the major big things that is an update in the whole status of sovereignty worldwide. And let me pause there. I'll read the rest of the questions, and I'll come back and pick that back up because that was the main topic I was going to talk about tonight. Road Chewer says, hi, just finished the movie. It was great. Quiz was okay. Well, if you didn't get 100 on the quiz, Road Chewer, email me, and I'll give you another chance at it. Merlin the Magician is back in the house saying, thoughts on China 2024. That was also something I wanted to talk about in the 2024 sovereignty status shizzle update. It does appear that the quick answer here, Merlin, and I'll do a more extended version for a true update that we record. It does appear that Taiwan's status as a semi-autonomous or semi-sovereign status is probably almost done. There are many indications that China is growing impatient and is going to perhaps use force to physically take over Taiwan, and it could happen soon. And now I'm not trying to cause a panic to anybody watching this, or even a panic in Taiwan. They know better than I do. But China's current status, and I'll go into many reasons why I'm assessing things this way. China's current status and its current leader, Xi Jinping, who is now a dictator for life, and its current economic status that is troubled, and its current demographic status, which is becoming troubling, all are combining to make China perhaps a lot more aggressive than anybody would have predicted even last year. And so I'm looking at world events, which is what I do, and saying, what are the likelihood that China is going to physically, militarily, commandeer / take Taiwan back? And a year ago, or 10 years and 20 and 30 years ago, I would have said, nah, they're not going to do it. They're playing a long game. They're playing the slow game. They're going to get Taiwan back eventually, but they're not going to do it through force. Even a year ago, I would have said, well, it's a little more stressful, but China's likely not going to take Taiwan back by force. They don't want the bad press. They don't want to have to destroy infrastructure. They don't want to have, it's mostly a bad rap. They don't want to be seen as being militarily a superpower that's turned into a dictatorship. They don't want to seem that way. Even a year ago, I would have said, no, they're going to resist doing that. They're not going to do it by force. I'm not so convinced anymore. For the 25 years I've been teaching, this year right now is the first time that I actually think, I give it 50-50 that China could militarily take over Taiwan really at any given moment. And that may seem like a very a radical thing to say, but I will, in the podcast about the 2024 update, point to many things that are happening now that indicate China's patience has grown thin, and for domestic and international reasons, they are very likely planning on doing something, and perhaps by force. I'll give you an example. I'll tell you this. You can take this home, write it down, and tell me I'm right when it happens. As the United States ramps up for the most ridiculous election of this century between Trump and Joe Biden, if anything radical that happens in this election in the United States that causes the United States to become distracted will be a prime time for China to do something radical. And what I mean by that is, if Donald Trump loses the election and then conspires or inspires a revolution from within the United States that has any serious momentum at all, that will be interpreted instantaneously by China as an opportune time to retake Taiwan because the U.S. is distracted in internal affairs. And they will do it. You heard it here first. And that's just one. I'm not making, again, for those of you that have followed the online office hours for this semester, I actually don't care about U.S. politics. But I only bring them up when I know they are affecting internationally what's happening. So I'm not saying Trump's going to lose and he's going to revolt. I'm just saying any sort of situation or predicament that makes the United States be in some sort of turmoil, and quite frankly, whatever happens in the election is likely going to cause turmoil in the United States. Whether Trump wins or Biden wins, or if it's a contested election, or it goes down to the wire, or there has to be a recount, all of these things, which are kind of likely, will cause the United States to be so focused on itself that China will very likely interpret that as a time to take action while the U.S. is not paying attention or doesn't have time to pay attention. So I think it's 50-50 this year or the coming years that China reasserts itself in terms of the Taiwan scenario and just says, we're just going to take it back. What's the U.S. going to do? The U.S. has on again, off again promised to defend Taiwan, but again, if the U.S. takes its eye off that ball, China's not going to care. They're going to go for it. And I actually saw a story earlier today about I think Donald Trump's, or I don't know if Donald Trump said it, but some assessors, some news people who maybe had talked to him suggested that if he gets reelected, he's going to tell China straight up, I don't care about Taiwan. We're not going to help them. Do whatever the hell you want. And again, that might be speculation, but it seems like something Trump would say. So that's another big sovereignty issue. Taiwan has never been a sovereign state, but it looks like its days as even semi-autonomous, I believe, are numbered. And there's all sorts of international implications and repercussions for that I'll talk more about in detail at another time, if you all like. Thanks for asking that, Merlin. Cat 101 says, can you explain the difference between Gaza and Palestine? Sure. In fact, let me see if I can, let's see if my Googling skills are good enough. I can just do it because that is a map question. Let's look for a map. Oops, map of Palestine. I can't even spell. Come on. Come on. Nope, L-E-S-T-I-N. Yeah, map Palestine. Go, go, go. Fine. Come on, Google. What you got? What you got? What you got? Actually, no, I love that map, but that's not the one I wanted. Just give me a current map. Here we go. What you got? Give me a map. There we go. Oh, wow, this is a historical map too. Wow, that's cool. Oh, I love websites that do this. This website's going through all of its history, which I like, but I'm going to go ahead and skip to this line. This is the one I wanted you to show you this cat so you understand. So what you see here is a map of Israel/Palestine. The blue area shaded in here is the sovereign state of Israel. Let me repeat, the sovereign state of Israel, recognized by enough countries in the world to be a sovereign state. Does every single country on planet Earth recognize the sovereign state of Israel? No, not all of them. In fact, some of the more important ones are in the neighborhood. Saudi Arabia still does not recognize Israel. Syria still does not recognize Israel. Iran does not recognize Israel. So when we say it's a sovereign state, don't make the assumption that every single other state recognizes, but make the assumption that enough of the world states recognize that it's sovereign so that it is accepted as a sovereign state. Now, to your question, Kat, that we can see here in this map, the remnants, and I can go into a whole lecture about this at another time, again, if you like, is that Palestine is the remnants of what was a bigger state. So what you're seeing on this map, hopefully you see the word Israel. That's the light blue shaded. West Bank, in all caps in black, West Bank. And then Gaza, that little strip to the southwest. Gaza plus West Bank equal Palestine. Now, 100 years ago, all of this entire territory used to be a place called Palestine. In fact, now I will look at the historical maps. Here you go. Historically, 100 years ago, this entire area was called Palestine. To its south was Egypt, a sovereign state. Transjordan, which was not a sovereign state yet, but was going to become Jordan. Syria, which was not a sovereign state, but will become Syria. And Lebanon, also not a sovereign state, back 100 years ago, that did become a sovereign state. So all the surrounding countries ended up becoming a sovereign state on their own. Palestine, however, was fought over. And it got, when the fight happened, it was between Jewish folks who were trying to create a Jewish state that they eventually did, called Israel, and then all the rest of the people who were originally there, I shouldn't say originally, who were there for hundreds of if not thousands of years, called the Palestinians, that were of a different ethnicity, mostly Arab, and a different religion, which was Islam. So you had a mixing of peoples in this territory, and that when it started to get divided up and being fought over, the Jewish state of Israel is what came into being in that light blue that you see in this map. And then the remnants of the Arab Islamic folks that were living there were moved into these two other areas called West Bank and Gaza Strip. So when we talk about, and this is what I also wanted to reference in the 2024 Sovereignty Shizzle update, is that there is something called the two-state solution. The conflict over this area, and I'm just going to say this area that now constitutes Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip. This area, which used to be Palestine, all of it together 100 years ago, and now is the sovereign state of Israel, and these remnants, this area has been fought over now for the better part of 80 years. Israel is the only section that is a true sovereign state by recognition of other countries. The West Bank and Gaza Strip are supposed to be recognized as a state called Palestine. And because this area has been under conflict by two different groups for all this time, the state called Palestine still hasn't come into existence. So to answer your question, back to Kat, West Bank plus Gaza Strip equals Palestine, although Palestine is not technically a sovereign state yet. And you'll hear reference to this in the news a lot right now as Israel is attacking the Gaza Strip to root out this Hamas rebel/terrorist group, that a lot of folks, a lot of peacemakers and politicians and diplomats are saying we need to return to the two-state solution. What that is referencing is that back in 1948, when this fight, technically this true fight over territory started, and Israel carved out a section and said we're a sovereign state, even at that time, the United Nations and all of the participant parties, including the United States, Great Britain, and Israel itself, said, hey, look, we're going to divide up this area. Part of it's going to be a Jewish state called Israel, and the other part will be a Palestinian state for the Arab Islamic folks. That's the two-state solution that everybody's been referencing for the better part of 80 years. So for 80 years, everybody has said, no. We're not going to get rid of the Palestinians. We're not going to kick out the Arab Islamic people. We're going to make a separate state for them, even though I know it's confusing because it's two different physical geographic territories. The West Bank's up here and Gaza Strip's down here. But that's where those areas are majority Arab Islamic folks. And I don't mean Islamic like terrorists, no, they're Islamic religious people. So it's two different peoples, okay? Jews and Arab Islamic folks that have divided up this territory into two entities which are supposed to eventually become two sovereign states. Israel, the Jewish state, got its sovereignty back in 1948, but it's been a long, protracted conflict for the last, again, 75 years of what to do with the other place called Palestine that was supposed to become a state. That's what all of the fighting has been about for all of this time. And I know I'm very radically simplifying, but that's what I do. I simplify to help you understand the crux of the situation. And it's been 75 years of figuring out how has this not happened and why has it not happened. And are the Israelis going to eventually just absorb these territories and take them back over and just make them into one giant Israeli state, which hardcore right-wing people in Israel have wanted to do since 1948? Or are we going to actually give these 1.5 to 2.5 million Palestinians their own state, which more liberal left-wing people in Israel have been saying they want to do? And the world general consensus is, yes, it should be two states. You should make Palestine a state and let them run their own affairs. But for reasons which are complicated and multifaceted, I will not go into the reasons why that has not happened yet. I just want you to understand for our 2024 update what that means. What does the two-state solution mean? It means that Palestine, West Bank plus Gaza Strip should eventually become their own independent places. You might then do the quick follow-up question of, aren't they already their own independent places? Because they look like it on that map. They're not. Israel occupies these areas. Israel actually controls the flow of movement of people and the economy in these areas, which is why they are technically and just realistically not sovereign. They do not control their own territory. They do not have the final say or the final power over their own territory. And as you now well know from last week's lecture, that is the definition of sovereignty. You have to have control over the people in your territory, and the Palestinians do not have that yet, and it remains to be seen if they ever will. All right, but we're already 5 minutes over the office hours. What the hell happened here tonight? I'm having a great time. By the way, side note, does that make sense to anybody? Did that help anybody understand for that 10-minute rant about what's going on in Israel right now and this whole conflict and how it's part of a bigger conflict that's been happening since 1948? And it also ties into what I was talking about earlier about why did the United States attack these terrorist groups across the Middle East? Because they're fighting on behalf of the Palestinians. So, or just maybe not even on behalf of the Palestinians, but they're fighting against the U.S. presence there because they also fight against Israeli presence there. So it's a murky stew of shit that's been happening in the Middle East, and it's been happening for a long time. That's why a lot of young folks, I don't fault you, I'd say 99% of Americans have no clue what's really going on there because it is complicated. It is not black and white. And for people who are like, yes, it's real easy, Israel should win, or it's real easy, the Palestinians should win. It's like, that is an oversimplified, a nonsensical take on what's happening here with millions and millions of people who have lived their lives and their families have lived their lives for decades to centuries in this territory that is contested between two different groups of people. I'm not picking sides because it's not my place to pick sides. I'm not involved in this conflict, and it is multifaceted and very difficult to kind of figure out what's going on, and more complicated to figure out how can we solve this. And the world has been trying for 75 years and has failed miserably at figuring it out. So who the hell am I to tell you what's going on or what's going to happen? But I can tell you roughly this is why we're at where we're at right now. Okay. Back to the chat room to finish up because we're already 5 minutes over the hour. Eastern Europe, it is, Spicy Boy says it's worth mentioning Iran's regime is internally struggling with its own citizens and may see starting conflicts as a way to prolong their reign on power. Spicy Boy is dead to rights on tonight. Well played, Spicy Boy. That is exactly correct. Anytime a country's government is perhaps in a little bit of trouble, and a little bit of turmoil. Perhaps they're losing the popular support of the people. They get filled with angst. And by the way, this applies to Iran and China. And when countries' governments feel like maybe they're on shaky ground, a really great way to rally the population behind you is get involved in a war. It detracts the population from their domestic troubles. So instead of blaming the Chinese government because their economy is starting to suck, in Iran's economy has sucked for decades because of their government. But so instead of taking the blame and dealing with that, you just go start a war with somebody else because it detracts or confuses your population. And most people's instinct is to support their government when their country's at a war. Are in a war with somebody. So it's a very easy common playbook, especially for dictators, but even democracies do this too. So there's an old movie called Wag the Dog. A lot of people thought when Bill Clinton got in all the trouble back in the 90s, having sex with an intern in the White House, that he suddenly went and attacked Sudan, I think it was. And so Wag the Dog is a fictional account of like, oh, you're having trouble at home? Well, go attack somebody somewhere else, and everybody will pay attention to that instead of what's going on at home. So it's a common playbook thing amongst dictators and democracies alike. And you might be seeing that play out, as Spicy Boy says. Iran could be getting involved in whipping up things in their neighborhood to detract from their own turmoils at home, but also be seen as a power player within the region that hopefully projects power so that their enemies won't mess with them. We'll see how that goes. Also could be why I'm suggesting why that China might go ahead and start a war with Taiwan soon, because internally they're in a bit of early turmoil. It's not full-blown turmoil, but China's economy and its demography are problematic right now. And if their economy starts to go downhill, the best way that Xi Jinping can rally the country around him is to go take Taiwan back. Everybody will say he's a hero, and they'll forget that their economy sucks. So again, pretty common playbook. There's really nothing new under the sun. We're all the same species, and we have been from the word go. And all the politics and kings and queens and dictators and countries and nations and states that have done all these things for thousands of years. Everything you've ever thought of that you think's happening in the news today that's new, it's not new. It's already been done and probably been done 100 times. Okay, but back to the chat room. JK in the house. Welcome back, JK Waite, who says maybe a bit on Poland. They seem wildly anti-Russian. They are. Well played, JK. I assume that's because of the USSR. You are also correct again, JK. Merlin the Magician says, sweet, thank you, Merlin. Rackenwad says, Jordan, question mark. Yes, that is where our U.S. base was. Jordan, I wouldn't say Jordan is a, maybe I would. Jordan is kind of a U.S. ally. Now, are they like forthright, rah, we love the USA, they can do anything they want? No. But Jordan is a reliable partner of the United States, and there are multiple U.S. military bases across Jordan and Turkey, by the way, that the U.S. uses to conduct campaigns of anti-terrorism or a regime change or possible wars in the Middle East. There are countries friendly to the United States, Jordan, Turkey, what are some other ones? Iraq, not really friendly, but the U.S. has occupied them since the U.S.-Iraq war. Many of the Gulf states, Kuwait has U.S. military bases in it. Not Saudi Arabia, although no, they used to have some. One of the reasons why Osama bin Laden started his terrorist campaign is because his main mission was to get U.S. military bases off of Saudi Arabia's soil, because he considered Saudi Arabia as sanctimonious, not sanctimonious, that's not the right word, but holy ground. The holy lands of Islam are Saudi Arabia, Mecca and Medina, and Osama bin Laden and his funky bunch thought it was disrespectful, if not outright blasphemy, to have foreign invaders on the soil of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, another on-again, off-again U.S. ally, and there has been U.S. troops there. And that was Osama bin Laden's original mission. Did anybody know that? Hopefully you learned that tonight. Osama bin Laden didn't start out saying, I want to go bomb the United States. He originally started by saying, we should purge foreign influence, specifically U.S. military influence, out of the Holy Land. And then he just got popular and did a whole bunch more horrific shit. So back to the chat. 161 says, hey, JB and Katie. McPherson here. Welcome, McPherson. VTGOG 2005 in my high school alma mater in 2001. Curious on your prediction of whether or not Japan and South Korea cool on past beefs and strengthen ties in counter to China like the U.S. wants. Yeah, good call, 161 McPherson. You're absolutely on point, McPherson. Your current events game is still on, my friend. Welcome back to the chat. I hope you're doing well. And yes, because we're almost out over 10 minutes overtime, I'll wrap up by saying yes. South Korea and Japan have a commonality now, common ground to push back against a China that not only is unified and a superpower for the first time in 200 years, but a superpower that is taking on a much more aggressive tone under its dictator for life, Xi Jinping, which openly, Xi Jinping wants to take back the Ryukyu Islands from Japan. Openly just says, no, they're ours. Who openly wants to take back Taiwan because he says, no, that's ours. Who openly wants to take back the entire South China Sea, which is a giant body of water that's mostly not even near China. And Xi Jinping says, that's ours as well. So there are a variety of reasons that Japan and South Korea, and by the way, China also is a North Korea supporter, and that troubles South Korea. So there are many reasons why South Korea and Japan will likely officially continue to bury the hatchet between them. The hatchet's already buried. They're going to bury that hatchet even deeper and deeper and deeper in the coming months, years, and decades to become more of a full-fledged not a force against China, but to continue, this isn't new, but to continue to be part of Team West in terms of doing military training and have an alliance militarily with the United States to help continue to counter a more and more aggressive China. And if you're Chinese, don't take offense to that. You should be proud of your country. You've grown economically and politically and militarily, and China now says, hey, we're a military power on par with the United States, and so we should push back and get back some of these territories and strategic areas near our country for our own self-defense. Completely logical. But hopefully you understand, Chinese citizens, that troubles Japanese citizens and Taiwanese people and South Korea, because you're helping fund North Korea's missile program that will perhaps endanger South Korea. So lots of countries around China respect China, want to do business with China, but worry about a much more military aggressive posturing from China. And so rightfully they are deepening their ties with Team West, specifically the United States. Good call, McPherson, and I hope you're doing well, my friend. OMRCZ says most of what the UN has touched that involves foreign territory divisions has been absolutely disgraceful, in my opinion. I'd like to hear more about that. And OM follows up with the territorial divisions after World War I and World War II in Europe caused so much chaos and so much violence in those territories. I'll do you one better, OM. I understand what you're saying with the post-war, but in Europe, the post-European theater of war, where basically the great Soviet Union was an ally of the U.S. and the European powers at the time to help defeat Nazi Germany. But because they were an ally, the U.S. and others kind of let the USSR have its way by reabsorbing Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Ukraine, and kind of politically taking over Poland and Hungary and Czechoslovakia. So that's a whole lesson you're going to learn in this class in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe has gone back and forth over the years. So that did cause some consternation. But by the way, that was not the doing of the UN. Many of those borders were diplomatically agreed upon as the UN itself was being created. So don't blame the UN for Europe borders. However, you can look at much more damaging when it came to borders being drawn was what's happened in the Middle East. And also that happened before the UN was an entity. That happened after World War I. So most of the borders that you see in the Middle East today were borders that were drawn up between European powers and some Middle Eastern powers, like the Saudi Arabians were at the table, but they didn't have that much power, but they retained their independence. But it was the Europeans that carved up the old Ottoman Empire. And that would have been what's now modern-day Turkey, is the remnants of the Ottoman Empire. But the Ottoman Empire controlled all of the Middle East up to World War I. And when they lost, the European powers went in and drew all those lines. The sovereign states you see today were a product of Europeans post-World War I. So OM, that wasn't the United Nations either. The United Nations didn't even start up till 1948. So we're not in World War I. But yes, a lot of political division, angst, anger, and current war is truly the product of sovereign state lines that were drawn by people not from those areas, who made up shit as they were drawing up sovereign states that we recognize in today's world that maybe should have never been sovereign states to begin with, or at least the borders should have been slightly different. Africa is another great example of European powers that went and drew all those lines in Africa without considering anything about local tribal affiliations or what peoples actually controlled what territories. All of Africa, almost all the borders of African sovereign states are arbitrary. They were made up by Europeans, not by even Africans, by Europeans from outside the whole region. So again, a lot of angst about sovereign states in today's world are indeed, as OM points out, the product of something else that had nothing to do with what was happening in the region itself or the peoples in those regions themselves. Let's see. Road Chewer says, helpful. Rockin' Watt says, yes. OMR says, yes. Thank you. First time chatter from Cal to, oh gosh, here we go. Cal Tumanello. Tumanello, Cal Tumanello, good name. Thank you for your first time chat to the affirmative Cal, who says yes. Rockin' Watt says thank you. Krukabo 121 says I think it helped because I really didn't know much about anything about the situation before this. Thank you, Krukabo. Cat 101 says I understand you better than the news. Thank you, Cat. That's what I'm here for. That's why I get paid the big bucks. I don't get paid shit, but I have a good time. Omar OMR says, yeah, I also appreciate the neutrality in which you are presenting this sensitive topic. Thank you, OM. I do my best. JK, back in the house, says, I think Djibouti has some pivotal military bases for the Red Sea operations, probably a good ally. Yeah, I'm always confused by Djibouti. Katie's laughing. I didn't even make that. It was not meant to be a joke. But I am confused by Djibouti's status. I think it's actually run by a pretty brutal dictator right now. I've had students in the class from Djibouti like, you need to do a talk about how bad our country is. I'm like, oh, geez, it's a small little place over on the other side of the earth. I haven't followed it exclusively. Ethiopia, on again, off again, has been a pretty decent U.S. ally, and there are U.S. bases in Ethiopia, some of them quite covert, to fight against terrorism in what we call the Horn of Africa, in Somalia, which has been in a state of chaos for decades. There are lots of terrorist groups over in Somalia that work and operate in Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, the Horn of Africa. Some of them, there's a lot of pirate activity around the Horn of Africa and into the Red Sea. Pirate activity, like literal pirates. I know not with eye patches drinking rum, but terrorists who take over boats and blow up stuff and take people hostage. So that's a fairly chaotic area of planet Earth, and there are U.S. bases in Somalia and in, I think, maybe even in Egypt. That one I'm not going to swear to, actually, but Ethiopia, there are some covert U.S. bases. In different African countries, there's U.S. bases. And Djibouti, I think, might be one as well, but I'm not going to swear to that either. But you're right, J.K., they do play a pivotal role in that area. I'm just not sure what it is, and I think that's quite intentional by the U.S. government that I don't know exactly what that is. Okay, but I know we're out of time, so the last comment's from Jaimez, who says, I hope the Baltic countries are all friends, not like the Balkan countries. Yes, most of the Baltic countries, that's up north on the Baltic Sea, most of them are pretty tight because they're all NATO members, and they all used to be part of Great Soviet Union, and they mostly despised being part of Great Soviet Union, which is why they jumped into the EU and NATO as quickly as they could to try to shield themselves from any futuristic Russian resilience and activity that might want to take them over again. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's happening right now, my friends, with Russia trying to take back over Ukraine. Likely, if they get most of Ukraine, they'll end up taking over another area called Moldova. And it could very well be that they make a play and a gambit against the Baltic states, which, of course, would be a Russia versus NATO war, which would be World War III. And the Russians are very, very, very optimistic that Donald Trump is going to win the next election because Donald Trump hates NATO, and Donald Trump actually likes Russia. Again, this is not a judgment call. I don't care if you like Donald Trump or hate him. He's openly against NATO. He has said it out loud, and he respects Vladimir Putin. So the Russians really hope that Trump gets elected, and if so, that would open a window for them to make a gambit against the Baltic states. I love the Baltic states. I've been to them all. They're quite delightful. I hope they don't get taken back over by Russia because I like them. But that's what world politics is all about, geopolitics, and that's how the leader of one country can actually affect events somewhere else. So whoever becomes the next president of the United States in this upcoming election will radically affect the status of sovereign states all around the world, and Russia might become much bigger if one candidate in the United States wins versus the other one. And Taiwan might get reabsorbed again into China if one candidate wins in the United States instead of the other one. So everything that we take for granted right now in terms of U.S. foreign policy is completely up for grabs if we have a different leader in charge of that foreign policy coming up this year in the election. It's kind of a very big deal. Okay, and I know I'm way out of time. Krukobo says, I laugh too. JK says, I'm sure they're stroll drinking rum. They might be. The pirates off of the Somalia coast. And Cal Tubinello says, I hear there's a lot of political disagreements in South Korea on foreign policy with balancing how to work with China/North Korea and Japan. That is correct, Cal, but that is a bigger topic for another time. I think I have covered many of the topics I wanted to touch upon for the 2024 sovereignty status update that I will now clean up and make into a recording with graphics for better understanding and learning on your behalf that will also make into a flash quiz for even more points. Thank you all for all the feedback you've given me. And in that podcast, I likely will wax poetic a bit more on Russia's situation and how they are becoming increasingly aggressive and disrespectful of the modern concept of sovereignty and areas they might take back over. I'll talk more about the Taiwan issue. I might talk about Northern Ireland and all the other things we've talked about. But if there's anything that I didn't get to that you are curious about that I did not reference in this online office hours about sovereignty, please email them to me so I can consider them as I build the script to make that 2024 update. Hopefully you all got your 5 points for tuning into this. And I really love, oh, by the way, so Kat says, can we watch the Captain Phillips movie to represent Somalia? Hey, it's topical. It's topical. The Houthis are blowing up ships in the Red Sea right now. Very similar circumstances. So I hope you enjoyed this online office hour. I know I really did because now it's an online hour and a half office hour. So if I go over time, that means I'm having a good time and fielding good questions from great students that I hope are learning stuff. I hope you are enjoying a World Regions class so far. And we'll do this again next Monday night. Same plaid time, same plaid channel here on Twitch. But for now, as always, party on and have a great week.